One thing that continues to come back, whether you're in like an IC role or a leadership role, is this idea of measurement. And I am really curious to get your take on this and how you tackle this. But you've actually said that in order to execute like an actual impactful marketing plan, you have to accept the fact that you won't be able to prove every single thing in that marketing plan, and that realistically it's the sum of a number of different things that you're doing that made an impact, not just like one or two things. How do you tackle the conversation with senior management when they ask you inevitably, Meg, what is the ROI of that? How many of those things drove revenue last year? What's the one thing that drove the most revenue? Like how do you tackle those conversations?
Yeah, I think it's really tough. I think marketers as a whole are in a really tough spot right now where we've been in this phase of optimization now for the past 2.5 years, where it's like growth at all costs wasn't cutting it. Now figure out exactly what works and cut everything else. And we also have had a ton of data that we got from using ad platforms, right? Where like all of a sudden you're like, shoot, I can attach clicks to views to conversions. This is amazing. And those two things together have led to this world where there's an assumption that you know a lot more than you do and that you can predict everything with absolute certainty without remembering the fact that humans don't do what you want them to do all the time. Like, you can't control what humans do. And I think that that's the part that a lot of people forget, is that, like, I don't know exactly what someone's going to do next week or the week after that. I can only give you my best shot and give you kind of my professional opinion. And I think it's that, coupled with the fact that attribution is getting harder and harder, that really we have to all accept this level of not being positive and take big bets. And I think if you only invest in things that you're absolutely sure on, you're not going to grow enough. Like, the things you could be absolutely sure on would be like maybe paid search. I don't think anybody thinks paid search is enough of a channel at this point to grow an entire business on. Like, they're diminishing returns there, and at some point you're going to hit a ceiling. And so I think you really have to be willing to commit to things that aren't safe bets. Otherwise, you just aren't going to grow as fast. Like, if you're fine with 5% growth year over year forever, then like, sure, like we can just go with safe bets. But I think overall, if you want something that's going to have a bigger impact, you kind of have to put your trust in channels, like social, like influencers, that are really, really hard to measure and don't work in a vacuum either. Like, one channel by itself isn't enough. What you need to do is create this sense of being everywhere and getting to your audience from multiple places, right? And to do that, you can't just rely on one thing, and you kind of have to look at the sum of all of it. When it comes to actually selling into leadership, I think that really depends. So at the end of the day, you need to have a vision for your overall marketing plan. And I think if you don't have a vision that you can clearly articulate, it's very hard to get buy-in. Just saying it's the sum isn't enough, right? I want to do all this stuff and all together it's going to work. That isn't enough. Like, you have to have a hypothesis about why all those pieces fit together. And I think if you haven't articulated that well to leadership, it's really hard to get buy-in. It's still hard to get buy-in even with the vision, but at least if you can get them to like commit to a vision and get excited about it, it's easier to explain that concept of all these other pieces work together. And I would say finally, like, know your audience, and leadership being your audience here. Like, if there's a channel, that they see and think, oh, that's working. For a lot of execs, it's often noise on LinkedIn, right? Like, if they see that, find a way to incorporate that in your plan and find a way to like create noise there so they feel like things are working. I think at the end of the day, we're all selling something. Like, you're selling internally, you're selling externally, and you have to realize who you're speaking to and what things speak to them and figure out how to pull that into the ask that you're making.